Margaret Everton lived in a quaint bungalow on the edge of Filigree Falls, known among the locals for her insatiable appetite for crosswords, cipher wheels, and any puzzle that promised a challenge. Early each morning, she would sip tea while running her fingers idly over enigma-laden pages, circled with cryptic clues waiting to be solved. The gentle gurgle of the falls and the faint creak of the nearby watermill always served as her soundtrack. The old watermill stood just beyond a narrow path behind her house. Weeds had taken over its foundation, while moss clung stubbornly to the wooden slats. The previous summer she learned that the wheel had once powered a small textile workshop before the structure was abandoned after a series of floods. Over time, it had become another piece of local landscape, seldom visited except by curious children and the occasional historian. One fine autumn morning, Margaret ventured out for her habitual walk. The air smelled of leaves and distant hearth smoke. She ambled down the muddy track by the creek and approached the mill, pausing as she noticed something unusual about the big wheel. A slip of paper, bright as fresh linen, had been pinned to one of its battered spokes. Odd, she mumbled, glancing around to see if anyone else was present. The path was deserted. She drew nearer, brushing aside a cluster of branches. The note was fastened with the help of a small safety pin, its edges already damp from the water spraying off the mill's slow, stuttering rotations. Margaret took the slip of paper and read. In ancient gloom and watery rest, a rusted key unlocks the chest, but holds the spin. Its turning gear reveals more secrets stored so near. The words were written in neat cursive. Margaret's heart hummed with excitement. A riddle pinned to the watermill? Perhaps it was part of some scavenger hunt. She studied it again. In ancient gloom and watery rest, a rusted key unlocks the chest. It sounded like a clue. If so, a clue to what? She scanned the surrounding area. The wheel groaned as it turned, water cascading off its curved paddles. Spillover from the river churned below, forming small eddies. Reveals more secrets stored so near, she repeated. Gingerly, she patted the wooden planking along the side, searching for more notes, but found nothing. Then, bending over, she noticed something else pinned near the bottom of the wheel. A length of soggy hemp cord tied to another piece of paper. It looked as if someone had tried to hide it beneath the turning axis. She pulled it free. The scribbled riddle was more smudged, as if it had been submerged. A watery hush keeps silent track. Your next clue hides beneath the black. Where foamy brine meets rocky dome, find the shape that stands alone. Margaret chewed her lip and read it twice. A watery hush, silent track. She tucked the two riddles in her jacket pocket. Someone was leaving these on the mill, but for what purpose? The moment she returned home, she sat at her kitchen table. Puzzle paraphernalia spread around her. Multiple older clues from blanket hunts in the local paper, logic puzzle grids and ciphers that she had written over the years. She carefully wrote the discovered riddles in her notebook, then read them again, picturing the terrain around Filigree Falls. The rocky dome could refer to a protruding shelf of rock near the falls themselves. Foamy brine meets rocky dome, she mused. The water near Filigree Falls sometimes frothed over a large stone bulge. Perhaps this was pointing to the base of the falls. Resolute, she donned her boots and jacket once more, and headed down a narrow path that led to the base of Filigree Falls. The sound of rushing water grew louder, bathing the morning in a constant roar. The falls had earned their name from the delicate, lacy cascades that formed during rainy seasons. Now, in early autumn, the flow was moderate but still impressive, shimmering in the midday sun. Margaret scanned the rocks, stepping carefully on the slick stones. She followed the creek's edge to a boulder that rose from the water, partially overhung by a thick, damp shelf. There was indeed a blackish film algae, perhaps coating part of the rock. She recalled the riddle, find the shape that stands alone. Was she looking for a particular outcropping or indentation, something signifying a shape? Edging closer, she dipped her arm into the water around the rock's side. A moment passed, and her fingertips brushed against a small cavity. Eagerly twisting herself around, she discovered a hole not easily visible from afar. Inside was another canned surprise, a sealed plastic bag holding a piece of paper. She lifted it out, droplets trickling down her forearm. The clue, thankfully protected from water, read, "When threads of tidings you have found, come hear the story underground, for hidden gold in watery mire still awaits the cunning scryer." Margaret exhaled in amazement. Who had set these riddles? And were they truly referencing some hidden treasure? She recalled whispers in the local library archives about a trunk of valuables, rumored to have disappeared decades ago during one of the bigger floods. The story was told in hushed tones. Old Henry Porter, one of the millers, had apparently tried to smuggle out golden coins inherited from a traveling relative. A flash flood struck unexpectedly, and the trunk was swept away into the swirling waters around Filigree Falls. No one could ever confirm its existence, yet here she was, tantalized by references to gold in watery mire. She carried her find home. Gathering reference books about local history, she pored over them, searching for mention of old Henry Porter's rumored gold. One tattered volume included a photograph of Henry standing proudly by the watermill, a wry grin on his lined face. The caption hinted at unresolved mysteries surrounding his death. After flipping a few pages, Margaret learned that he had drowned just downstream from the mill, presumably caught by a swirling current. Indeed, the trunk had never been found. That night, Margaret's dreams were awash in swirling puzzle pieces, the roar of waterfalls and glimmers of sunken gold. She resolved to follow these riddles, convinced they related to Porter's lost treasure. In the morning, she stopped by the local library, hoping to speak with Lucinda Gray, the librarian and a friend since childhood. Lucinda was an enthusiast of local lore and would be eager to hear about these mysteries. The library was hush, post-lunch quiet, with only a few patrons reading at tables. "Hold on, you found riddles pinned to the mill?" Lucinda exclaimed when Margaret showed her notes. "Yes, and one under the falls. It mentions hidden gold. Could it really be referring to that trunk from the old stories?" "It might well be," Lucinda whispered, leaning closer, eyebrows arched. "I've heard the gossip for years. No one ever found it. The floods might have swept it deeper into the lake or lodged it under a submerged log, no telling. But the existence of these new riddles suggests someone is onto something. Or they're having fun, but happen to know some real history." Margaret rubbed the pages thoughtfully. "If anybody knows the local waterways and hidden spots, it's Elijah Moore." Elijah was a spry retiree whose father and grandfather had worked at the mill in its final days. He might recall whether there's some secret basement or hidden chamber. They found Elijah resting on a bench across town that afternoon, feeding pigeons in the autumn sunshine. He listened to Margaret's recounting with rapt attention, occasionally nodding. "Thole trunk. Father told me stories." Treasure might not just be gold coins, though. Rumor had it Henry Porter had jewelry, too. Antique brooches, pearls. Elijah tapped his cane thoughtfully. One rumor said Porter stored the valuables in a special cask in the mill's sealed basement. But if the cask was actually in a trunk that got swept away, it's a real puzzle indeed. The watermill has a sub-level, but it's been flooded for years. "A sub-level?" Margaret's pulse quickened. "Do you know where its entrance might be found?" Elijah's slightly clouded eyes crinkled with mischief. "I recall a hatch in the floor behind the main gear room. People rarely ventured there because the floorboards were rotten. Might still be, so watch your step. If you clear away the weeds, you might see it." With a thankful nod, Margaret took note. She and Lucinda decided to head straight for the mill. The sky was tinged with pink by the time they reached it. Her friend helped hold a flashlight as they cleared some weeds and debris from the back corner. Sure enough, they revealed a heavy wooden trap door, partially swollen from dampness. When Lucinda tried to lift it, it groaned in protest. "It must be stuck," she said. We need crowbars or something to pry it open. Margaret eyed the door. Agreed. Let's go carefully, though. We don't want it collapsing. We'll come back tomorrow with better tools. The next day, early sunlight found them armed with crowbars and rope. Pulling together, they pried the boards open. A rank, damp smell wafted up. Beneath lay a wooden ladder, disappearing into darkness. The feeble beam of a flashlight revealed water a few feet down. "It's flooded," Lucinda observed nervously. Margaret tested the stability of the ladder, which creaked ominously. "We should double-check if there's anything at all down there, otherwise we're just risking a dunk and a broken bone." She leaned, shining the light around. She spotted something. A platform halfway down, angled so that the basement likely extended deeper than they could easily see. There, to their surprise, pinned with a nail to one of the ladder's rungs, was another small. Margaret plucked it free. This riddle read: "The axle spins and churns below. Through hidden tunnels waters flow. Take steps into the milling gloom. Tread lightly to unearth the tomb." "That must confirm we're on the right track," Margaret breathed. "I can't help but feel like we're walking into a ghost story." She looked at her friend. "But I can't stop now." Lucinda bunched her jacket around her shoulders. "Agreed. Let's see if we can at least figure out how extensive this sub-level is." They lowered themselves carefully. The water came up to Margaret's ankles, ominously cold. Wooden beams dripped from the overhead, and algae coated the walls. The space was cramped, the brick walls slick. Their flashlights swept around, revealing the remains of old gear mechanisms, a broken wheel, and debris from the mill's past. For a moment it felt like stepping back in time. But then, in the far corner, Margaret caught a glint. She waited closer, discovering a metal box perched on a rotted wooden crate. "Lucinda, over here!" She lifted the hasp-latched lid, but it was empty. Perhaps once used to store tools. No treasure. Still, she half expected to find more riddles, but there was nothing. She turned and surveyed the area. No sign of that trunk, just ascending water swirling around her ankles. The thought of Henry Porter's rumoured gold felt more elusive than ever. They heard a scraping noise near the base of the ladder. A stray branch drifting in from a small creek outlet, perhaps. It jostled them, intensifying their sense of claustrophobia. "I think we should head back up," Lucinda said. "It's too risky down here with so many rotted boards. There might be another clue hidden somewhere else." Reluctantly, Margaret agreed. They climbed out of the basement and permitted themselves a short rest in the crisp outside air. "We must be missing something," Margaret murmured. She recalled the riddles again. "When threads of tidings you have found, come hear the story underground." Suddenly her phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. Curious, she answered. A raspy voice greeted her. "I hear you've been sniffing around the old mill." Margaret froze, and Lucinda looked on in alarm. "Those riddles, did you find them all?" the voice asked. Margaret swallowed. "Who is this?" "Let's say an interested party. I left the riddles, but I wasn't expecting an audience. I'll share what I know, but not yet. I want to see if you're worthy. Solve one final clue, and you'll learn where to find the trunk." The voice paused, then gave a short riddle. "Diamonds in the gloom at dawn, count the echoes for they're gone. Under the arch where water lies, the final secret calmly sighs." "Wait," Margaret said. "Are you?" But the line went dead. Baffled, Margaret repeated the riddle to Lucinda. "Diamonds in the gloom at dawn, count the echoes, under the arch." Filigree Falls had an old stone bridge that arched over a deeper part of the creek just downstream. At dawn, the water under that bridge sometimes sparkled like diamonds when the first rays of sun hit it. They agreed to check first thing in the morning. That night, Margaret shifted in bed, replaying the voice's words. Who could it be? Perhaps an old local who had discovered the trunk's location. Maybe they wanted someone else to do the legwork. or to share in the discovery. The possibility of hidden treasure thrummed in her mind. She rose before sunrise, bundling herself in a warm coat and hurrying to meet Lucinda at the stone bridge. Mist curled over the creek, still tinged with darkness. The sky carried faint streaks of pink. Gently a hush enveloped them, broken only by the murmur of water. Lucinda shone a small flashlight. "Under the arch," she reminded Margaret. They climbed down the embankment, stepping cautiously on the rocks. The creek ran steadily, cold and dark. Then Margaret saw something taped to the underside of the bridge. A small glass jar with a slip of paper sealed inside. Lucinda removed it and handed it to her friend. That must be the clue the caller mentioned. Margaret unscrewed the jar, pulling out the paper. It bore only a string of numbers. December 5th, 1819, August 5th, 12/6, February 1st, 19, 5 May 14th, 1320. Margaret recognized it as a simple letter substitution code, probably referencing each number's position in the alphabet. 1 equals A, 2 equals B, etc. Carefully, she spelled it out. 12 equals L5 equals E18 equals R19 equals S8 equals H5 equals E12 equals L6 equals F8. So that made LR, shell, fifth. That seemed off. Perhaps she should group them differently. She tried grouping the numbers. May 18th, 12, LR. That didn't seem correct. Another approach might be each pair stands for one letter. But these are mostly smaller numbers. Typically A equals 1 to Z equals 26. Possibly it's separated by spaces. 12 end, 5, 18, eve end, 5 end, 12, 12 end, 19, 5 end, 5, 15, 20. Translating carefully, 12 L5 E18 PR. So first word is lur. That's odd. Another possibility is the code might shift. Or maybe each set of numbers forms a single word using a different cipher. She tapped her chin. "We might be missing a pattern," she murmured. Lucinda considered. Could it be a Caesar shift or something? Or maybe it's two-digit numbers forming letters. For instance, 12 is L. Or it could represent 12 as a single entity in a polyalphabetic cipher. Margaret tried a mild Caesar shift. If the code was shifted by 1, 12 becomes 11K, 5 becomes 4D, 18 becomes 17Q. That looked random. She tried shifting the other way. 13 is M, 6 is F, 19 is S. Also nonsense. Let's try pairing them differently. Consider 12/5 as 125, which is well above 26. That can't be it. Perhaps we're reading the spacing incorrectly. The comma might indicate two phrases. She looked again at the sequence. May 18th, 12 August 5th, 19 12 6 2 1. May 13th, 19 5 14 20. Another approach was to place them in a table. Lucy rummaged in her bag for a pen and paper. They wrote them in pairs or tried skipping. Then Margaret noticed something. If 19 is S, 8 is H, 5 is E, 12 is L, 6 is F, that spells chef. So the second set after 18 might form the word shelf. Indeed, 19 equals S, 8 equals H, 5 equals E, 12 equals L, 6 equals F. So that means May 18th, 12 is separate, or might be a single word. 12 equals L, 5 equals E. 18 equals R. That spells leer. That doesn't make sense. Wait, maybe it's led or let. She realized the possibility of reading 18 as a letter that might pair with 19, but that's not neat. Alternatively, 18 might be R, but that alone doesn't fix leer. Maybe the code is referencing a direction, LER, or if you consider a slight shift, 12L could remain L, 5E could remain E, 18, R might remain R. That's LERE. Or maybe it's an anagram, REL, ERL, LRE. Rel might not be a word. ARL no, L-L-E or E-L-R. This was perplexing. They turned to the next sequence after the comma. 2-1, May 13th, 19, 5, 14, 20, translating directly, 2 equals B, 1 equals A, 19 equals S, 5 equals E, 13 equals N, 5 equals E, 14 equals N, 20 equals T. That spells basement, Lucinda gasped. So that second part definitely says basement. The first one ends in shelf. So maybe it's telling us bay shelf, basement. But that le part is nonsense, unless we messed up one letter. If 18 is spelled I by some shift, that's too large a jump. Wait, if we tried 18 as 1 plus 8 equals 9I, that's unorthodox, but let's see. 12 is L, 5 is E, 9 is I. That spells L-I. Not correct either. What if 18 is the sum of 1 plus 8 equals 9, which is I? Do we get L-E-I? That's not helpful. Another approach. Is it possible 12 is repeated, or we should treat 12 as 1 plus 2 equals 3, C? Then 5 is E, 18 is R, so that might yield C? R. That's not it. I might be overthinking it, Margaret muttered. They stared at the numbers again. May 18th. 12. Wait a minute, said Lucinda. Could it be that we're to reorder them? 5, 12, 18 is ELR. That's ELR, still nonsense. Or May 12th, 18 is our EL, which is rel. We can rearrange rel to lur. Maybe it's telling us a location. Rel shelf basement? They frowned. Margaret smacked her flashlight against her palm in frustration. We might be focusing on the letters incorrectly. Maybe each pair is a single letter. For instance, 12-5 might be 125, which is too big. Or 12 could be 12th letter equals L. 5 could be 5th letter equals E. 18 is R. She repeated that. So indeed, layer shelf basement. That suggests we look for a layer shelf, but that doesn't ring a bell. Then she had a spark of insight. What about flower shelf basement? If we treat 12 as L, 5 as E, 18 as R, but if one of those is a combined letter to form O, perhaps 518, 5 plus 18 equals 23, is W, so that might work. She spelled it out. 12 is L, 5 plus 18 equals 23 is W, so that's LW. That's incomplete. Let's do it systematically. 12 is L, 5 plus 18 equals 23, which is W, so that gives us LW. But then we have August 5th, 1912-6 left to consider next. If we do that in normal letters, we get SHE-LF. Indeed, 19 equals S, 8 equals H, 5 equals E, 12 equals L, 6 equals F. So that yields LW shelf. LW shelf? That's close to flower shelf if we consider W as W, so L plus W might be read as L plus W might be read as L plus U? That's a stretch. She pressed her lips together. But maybe the idea is that it's the flower shelf. Then the final phrase is basement. So altogether it's flower shelf, basement. She spied Lucinda's eyes shining. That must be it. They wanted to hint that we need to look on the lower shelf in the basement. They hurried back to the mill's basement, flashlights in hand, descending the creaking ladder. Water still swirled around their ankles. Edging carefully along the side, they inspected the remains of old shelves, half collapsed under dampness. On the top shelves were rusted tools, broken glass, waterlogged cloth. On the middle shelves, lumps of matted fibre. But on the bottom shelf, at last, Margaret found an old, battered wooden box, sealed with a series of nails hammered in haphazardly. A wave of excitement coursed through her. They pried it open. Inside was a small metal-bound notebook with pages thick and swollen from moisture. The scrawled handwriting was old, the ink faded. They flipped through, reading fragments. The trunk sank, Henry's last attempt. Near the main wheel. Saw it lodged under the foundation beams. Then they found a final page in near legible condition. In a moment of desperation, Henry tried to anchor the trunk near the mill's wheel, hoping to retrieve it later. The chain snapped. Might still be caught in the substrate. Tethered, half buried in the silt. Look behind the wheel structure just off the north side, where the current is weaker than it seems. Margaret looked at Lucinda in excitement. This must be the key to find the actual trunk. She realized that the phone call's riddle was meant to guide them to this specific notebook. The note was effectively a map, or more precisely, a set of final instructions. Swallowing their nerves, they returned topside, rounding the mill to the north side. A thick cluster of reeds and brambles lined the bank. The water that churned under the wheel's perimeter was dark and swirling, but calmer by the north bank. They parted the reeds and saw that the water was chest-deep near the wheel's support beams. Margaret took a deep breath. We'll need waders, or something. It's going to be cold. But her eagerness overshadowed her dread of the chill. They rummaged through their equipment. Lucinda, ever practical, had brought tall rubber boots and heavy gloves in her trunk just in case. Sloshing into the water, Margaret felt the immediate shock of cold creeping up her legs. She inched her way deeper, shining a waterproof flashlight. The water's surface churned gently, stirring up silt so that visibility was nearly nil. She probed the riverbed with a long pole. Then she felt something metallic. Her heart thumped. Together they maneuvered around it, hooking what turned out to be a chain. Lucinda anchored herself on a rock while Margaret tugged. The silt resisted, clinging to the submerged object. At last, after a tense few minutes, they saw the corner of a wooden trunk materialize. It was swathed in algae, battered by time, and heavy as an anchor. Gritting their teeth with effort, they pulled it free from the riverbed, water gurgling off its edges. Once on shore, they collapsed next to it, panting. The trunk was locked with a thick, rusted padlock. Lucinda rummaged for the crowbar. One good pry and the padlock's corroded shank snapped. Margaret pried the lid open. Instantly a musty odour hit them. Inside lay a mass of sopping cloth, but beneath it gleamed something metallic. Carefully, she parted the layers. There, at last, were coins tarnished green, some half disintegrated but still recognizable as gold pieces. Next to them were strands of pearls, a silver pocket watch, and a delicate filigree brooch. A watery treasure indeed. They gazed at each other, breathless. "We found it," Lucinda whispered. Henry Porter's lost trunk? Margaret's mind flashed with a final piece of the puzzle, that mysterious caller who orchestrated the riddles. Why had they led her here? As they congratulated each other, her phone rang again. She answered, voice trembling with excitement. The same raspy voice spoke. "Congratulations! You found it! I saw from my vantage you pulled the trunk from the water." Margaret scanned the area. Were they being watched? She saw no one. But who are you? A short pause. Let's say I was a friend of a friend, someone who finally figured out where that trunk sank decades ago. I didn't have the endurance to do the work, but I wanted it found. I left the clues to ensure the trunk didn't vanish into the wrong hands, someone who'd ignore the importance of local history. And I suspected you, puzzle lover that you are, would follow them properly. Margaret's throat tightened. But what now? The trunk is full of valuables. We can't just... We share it with the town, the voice said simply. Place the historical artifacts in the local museum. Give a portion of the gold to restore the mill or set up something for the community. You decide. The rest is your reward for solving the riddles. Then the line clicked off. Margaret tried calling back, but no one answered. She looked at Lucinda. We have a lot of phone calls to make. Word spread quickly through Filigree Falls. The local historical society beamed with excitement, and soon the trunk's contents were documented. Most neighbors welcomed the plan to display Henry Porter's trunk and valuables in a rotating exhibit at the library or a future museum. A portion of the treasure was carefully appraised, with a chunk earmarked for restoration of the watermill, now recognized for its historical importance. Lucinda negotiated for a tiny gallery corner, dedicating it to local puzzle lore. Margaret felt a rush of pride knowing she had played a part in preserving Filigree Falls history. Yet the raspy-voiced benefactor never came forward publicly. No trace of them emerged. Perhaps it was another puzzle to remain unsolved. Or maybe it was simply a private local fulfilling a dream of seeing the old tale concluded. Days later, Margaret stood by the gently turning mill wheel, fresh boards reinforcing the walkway. She watched the water swirl beneath. Autumn leaves drifted on the surface as she thought of Henry Porter's once-forgotten trunk and the riddles that led her to it. As a crisp breeze carried the faint scent of the falls, she smiled. Filigree Falls was brimming with mysteries, many still hidden in its waters, waiting for a curious puzzle lover to bring them to light. And Margaret, heart brimming with the thrill of discovery, knew that sometimes the greatest part of a treasure hunt lay in the unraveling of the riddle itself.